I just walked through a 320 square foot house that felt bigger than my friend's 4,000 square foot mansion. Same me, same eyes, completely different feeling. And once I found out why, I couldn't unsee it in every small space I've ever lived in. Before I show you exactly how they pulled this off, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because I'm breaking this whole thing down room by room, including the 3 tricks almost nobody talks about. And stick around till the end, because I'm going to show you the one design choice that actually backfires and makes small spaces feel smaller. Most videos won't tell you that part. On-screen text. Subscribe plus bell bottom left, small animated arrow. Here's the thing. This isn't a video about cute tiny houses on wheels with a ladder to a loft bed. That's the old version of tiny living. I'm talking about what's actually happening in 2026, a real, fast-growing housing category worth close to $6.5 billion globally this year, built by people who spent a decade figuring out the exact psychology of why a room feels big or small, and it has almost nothing to do with square footage. Cut to simple on-screen stat card. $6.39 billion global tiny home market, 2026. So let's start with the number that surprised me most. Tiny houses used to be a niche internet trend. A guy on YouTube building a house out of a shipping container. That's not what this is anymore. The global tiny home market is sitting at roughly $6.4 billion in 2026, and it's projected to keep climbing toward $8.5 billion by the early 2030s. North America alone accounts for about a third of that market. And the reason isn't just people like small houses now. It's 3 things stacking on top of each other. Housing costs are brutal, remote work made location less important, and this is the part most people miss, the engineering got dramatically better. We're not building glorified sheds anymore. In 2026, builders are using things like cross-laminated timber, which is a carbon sequestering material that's also incredibly strong for its weight. Automated construction and generative design software are being used to optimize every single inch before a wall is even cut. Some of these builds are seeing close to a 30% jump in thermal efficiency compared to older models, meaning they hold heat and cool air dramatically better than the tiny houses from even 5 years ago. So when you walk into one of these newer builds, you're not walking into a small house. You're walking into a space that's been engineered almost obsessively to perform like a much bigger one. Cut to B-roll. Modern tiny house exterior, clean lines, large windows. But engineering is only half the story. The other half is psychological. And this is where it gets genuinely interesting. Here's something most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't measure square footage. It doesn't calculate area. It reacts to a handful of visual signals. How far your eye can travel before it hits a wall, how much clutter is competing for your attention, how much light is bouncing around, and how tall the room feels, not how tall it actually is. That's why a 4,000 square foot house full of heavy furniture, mismatched paint, and stuff piled in every corner can feel more suffocating than a 300 square foot space that was designed with intention. Designers who specialize in small spaces will tell you the same thing over and over. The number one mistake people make isn't having too little space. It's adding too much stuff to the space they do have. Every object in a small home has to earn its spot. There's no room for anything that's purely decorative and doesn't serve a function. So a tiny house that feels like a mansion isn't magic. It's the result of a handful of very specific, very repeatable design decisions. Let's go through them, because you can use every single one of these in your own home, tiny or not. Trick 1. Breathing room, not more room. This one sounds backwards, but designers swear by it. Instead of pushing furniture flat against the walls to save space, they pull it in slightly, leaving about 18 to 24 inches of walking room behind a couch or chair. Why would giving up space make a room feel bigger? Because it creates depth. Your eye now has layers to travel through: furniture, then a gap, then wall, instead of hitting a flat, dead-end surface immediately. Shadows and sight lines start overlapping, and that reads as spacious to your brain even though the total floor area hasn't changed at all. Trick 2. Hang your curtains wrong on purpose. Second trick, And this is one of my favorites because it costs you nothing but a few extra inches of curtain rod. Hang curtains higher and wider than the actual window frame, not snug around the glass, well above it, and extending past the sides. It sounds like a small detail, but it drags your eye upward and outward, which tricks your brain into registering a taller, wider room than what's actually there. It's one of the cheapest visual upgrades in the entire design world, and almost nobody does it. Trick 3. One color, floor to ceiling. Here's where 2026 design broke from the last decade's rulebook. The accent wall is out. Painting one wall a bold color and leaving the rest neutral actually chops a small room into visual pieces, which makes it feel more cramped, not less. What's working now is the opposite. One consistent color across every wall, sometimes even up onto the ceiling and trim, a technique some designers call color drenching. When there's no contrast breaking up the room, your eye can't find the edges. The boundaries disappear, and the whole space reads as one continuous volume instead of 4 separate walls closing in on you. Trick 4. Mirrors aren't decoration, they're a cheat code. This is the one people underestimate the most. A well-placed mirror, ideally facing a window, doesn't just reflect light. It reflects the entire room, effectively doubling what your eye perceives without adding a single square foot. In a lot of these tiny homes, you'll find one large mirror strategically placed opposite the main light source. It's not there to check your outfit. It's structural in a psychological sense. It's part of how the room performs. Trick 5. Vertical space is the real estate everyone ignores. And the last one, think vertically. Most of us only decorate and use the bottom 5 or 6 feet of a room out of habit. But everything above roughly waist-to-shoulder height in most homes is completely wasted. Floating shelves, hanging light fixtures instead of floor lamps, tall storage that draws the eye upward. All of it makes a low square footage home feel like it has room to breathe because you're finally using the space that was always there. Now here's what's genuinely changed just this year, not 5 years ago. For a long time, the classic tiny house had a loft bedroom above the living area, accessed by a ladder. It made sense on paper. It frees up the entire ground floor for the kitchen and living space. But in 2026, full-time tiny house residents are increasingly choosing ground floor bedrooms instead, even though it costs them some living area square footage. Why? Because climbing a ladder every night sounds charming in a video and gets old fast in real life, especially for anyone who isn't in their 20s. We're also seeing a real rise in expandable and capsule-style tiny homes. Units that physically slide or fold open once they're parked, sometimes nearly doubling their footprint on site. And energy-positive tiny homes are becoming a real category, not a concept. Homes designed to generate more power than they actually use, largely thanks to better solar integration and smarter insulation. This is the part that matters. Tiny houses in 2026 aren't experimental anymore. They're being built to meet actual residential codes in a lot of places, which means for a growing number of people, this isn't a novelty, it's just their house. I'm not going to pretend this is some magic affordable housing loophole, because it isn't always. Custom tiny house builds run around $150 per square foot on average, which sounds cheap until you remember that's still real money for a home that might only be 300 to 500 square feet total. A basic 5 kilowatt solar setup alone can run about $12,000. And if you want your tiny house on a permanent foundation instead of wheels, expect to pay roughly 20% more, mostly because of permitting. So the honest version is, tiny houses can absolutely save you money compared to a conventional home, especially on land, taxes, utilities, and long-term maintenance. But tiny doesn't automatically mean cheap. The savings come from smaller, not from low quality, and a well-built one still costs real money per square foot. And who's actually doing this? It's not just 22-year-olds with a GoPro. Surveys show more than half of Americans say they'd at least consider living in a tiny home, and millennials are the most open to it. About 63% say they'd want a smaller home. But here's the part that surprised me. 2 out of every 5 tiny house owners are over 50. This isn't just a young person's minimalism trend. It's downsizing retirees, remote workers who don't need to live near an office anymore, and people who are simply tired of paying for square footage they never use. Okay, I promised you the trick that backfires. So here it is. All of this only works if the house stays edited. The single biggest failure mode in small space design isn't the layout. It's clutter creeping back and over time. A tiny house designed with all 5 of those tricks looks incredible on move-in day. 6 months later, if every new item doesn't have a designated home and a reason to exist, all that carefully engineered spaciousness collapses fast, because in a small footprint, clutter doesn't just look messy, it visually shrinks the entire room. And realistically, tiny houses aren't for everyone or every city. In dense urban markets like New York, they still make up a tiny sliver of actual home sales. This isn't going to replace apartment living in a place like that anytime soon. Zoning laws vary wildly by state and city. So can I even legally live in one here is a real question you have to answer before you get attached to the idea. So, does a tiny house actually feel bigger than a mansion? Sometimes yes. Not because of magic and not because of square footage. Because of walking room, curtain height, one consistent color, a well-placed mirror, and finally using the space above your head that you've been ignoring your whole life. If you want me to do a full room-by-room breakdown of an actual 2026 tiny house build, cost, materials, everything, comment build below, and I'll make that video next. If this changed how you'll look at your own space, hit subscribe, drop a like, and I'll see you in the next one. End screen, subscribe button animation plus link to next recommended video.